Today, we're taking a deep dive into the world of EQ. And to do that, we're going to be taking a closer look at the Empress Para EQ Deluxe. This is a fully featured EQ with a boost, and I think it makes a great jumping off point to understand EQ as well as different ways that we can use it. Whether you're using this EQ or a different one, hopefully this video will help you understand EQ, how it works, and different ways to shape your tone. All right, let's get into it. The Para EQ offers three main types of EQ. Now I'm calling them types of EQ just because I'm not really sure how else you would refer to them, but by this I mean low pass and high pass filter, a shelving EQ, as well as parametric band EQs. Now those are probably terms that you've heard before, but I want to make sure that you guys understand what those are actually doing, and to do that I want to jump into Pro Tools. We're going to listen to a short guitar loop, and I'm going to demonstrate what those types of EQs what they do, what they look like when you're seeing them here, and what you can expect to accomplish with them. What, when you're tweaking your tone, what they can help you do. The first kind of EQ I want to talk about are high pass and low pass filters. Now they're exactly how they sound. A high pass allows higher frequencies to pass and it cuts out lows, whereas a low pass filter allows low frequencies to pass and it cuts out highs. We'll listen to a short guitar loop, and then I will bring in each one and move it around. You can kind of see what it looks like here and hear what it sounds like. Now, some of those settings are going to be super subtle, but a good use for this, maybe for the low pass that we've seen a lot lately, is with modelers. Sometimes we use this type of EQ to cut out those super high frequencies that maybe seem harsh or unnatural that we get with modelers or different digital sources. A high pass is great for cutting out these really low frequencies, especially if you're playing in a band setting or you're recording. A lot of times with guitar, you don't need that really low information. It just kind of gets rid of some rumble, gets rid of maybe some mud, even though that might be a little higher, but sometimes it can just sound woofy. A high pass is a great way to tighten up your tone, especially more distorted tones. Again, just an overall kind of shaping tool. The next type of EQ that I want to talk about is shelving EQ. Now, this is another kind of general EQ. It applies to a lot of frequencies. We're not looking at very specific frequencies. It's kind of a general shaping tool. And this is really great if you're not super familiar with, frequencies and you just want to overall shape your tone to be brighter or darker, get rid of some lows and some highs. That's generally, this EQ is going to do that. It's going to be for general shaping. Here's what it looks like. So here we have a low shelf, and you can see as I bring this down, I'm getting rid of lows. And then, I can move it side to side. That's my frequency. I'm changing what frequency that shelf starts at. And then on the high end, we have a similar type thing where we're just applying a large shelf. So we're applying this to all of these frequencies right here, just generally brightening or darkening. Now on the Para EQ, I believe the high shelf is around 1K, so it's down here, and that's going to be great for just kind of brightening up your tone. And then the low shelf on the Para EQ is around 200. So that's going to really control these low end frequencies, get rid of some of that rumble, some of that mud, but maybe not as drastically as a high pass or low pass filter. These are going to be, again, more general shaping tools. Let's hear how some of these sound on this loop. Now, obviously, with a shelving EQ, you can boost or cut. So you might find yourself wanting to boost highs, or you could even try cutting lows. They're going to have similar yet slightly different effects. Next, we'll talk about parametric EQs. Here's what those look like. So we can boost or cut with these, and they apply to very specific frequencies. Now we also have what they call the Q, which makes this wider or more narrow. So as you can see, that's very wide. We're affecting a lot of frequencies. And if we bring our Q in, then we're affecting very narrow amount of frequencies, right? So maybe we have something that's super harsh, we can find that frequency and cut that frequency out. Or say we want to maybe have some sort of boost. You know, something like a tube screamer might be boosting around, I think around 730, 750, somewhere in here. This would be kind of that mid-range honk that we get from a tube screamer. Clons are a little higher, they might be up in here, but they have kind of this gentle EQ that's happening with those overdrives. We can kind of simulate those with different types of parametric EQ. These are also great problem-solving type of EQ. Say our tone's a little muddy, we want to maybe take out some of these low mids around, you know, between 200 and 400 maybe. That's a great way to get some mud out of our tone, maybe give us a little more definition. The opposite of that might be, you know, boosting maybe around 2K or so. Maybe we want kind of a broader Q on that, so we're getting more definition, a little more brightness, but not necessarily some of this higher end harshness. So a quick aside here, I was editing this video and I realized something that I want to mention. You can hear when I pull that lower band down, I'm kind of in the lower mid-range and I make that Q really wide. You can notice that the signal level drops, right? So one thing that we want to be aware of and mindful of is that when we're EQing and we're using wide Qs specifically, this happens all the time, but you really hear more when you're using that wide Q and you're affecting a lot of different frequencies, you're affecting your gain. And especially if you're using an EQ into an amp, that's something to be aware of. If you're pulling out a lot of low mids, say, then your signal level is going to go down. That might hit the amp differently. Now, on the other side of that, we can use that to our benefit in boosting an amp. We might boost the mid-range or boost some high-end to really help drive that amp the way we want it to. So just remember, when you're EQing, you're affecting gain. You're affecting the amount of signal, and use that accordingly. Obviously, that's going to work in your favor in different ways, and other ways, other times you may have to compensate for that. You might have to boost the output level of the EQ, or, you know, in some other way compensate for that loss of signal. Now that we have a better understanding of how these different types of EQs work, let's take a look at the Para EQ and talk about some different ways to use it. I'm using my Sugar guitar into a Tweed Bassman copy. Here's what it sounds like. So not bad, but it definitely could use some help. And this brings me to my first use, and that's just general tone shaping. This is taking a sound that maybe isn't quite right and making it a little better. Now, obviously, we want to do as much of that tone shaping and general EQing as we can. on the amp, or maybe with an overdrive that we're using or something like that. But our EQ is going to kind of take us that final part of the way, you know, that last little bit. We're going to be able to get more specific or just do general tone shaping. We could also use this to balance between guitars. Maybe we have a humbucker style guitar and we want to go to something with single coils, and so we need an EQ to balance those out. But overall, we're just generally talking about tone shaping here, just gentle shaping, or, you know, maybe sometimes very specific shaping to get our sound and our tone exactly where we want it. I really like the Para EQ for this because of how it's laid out. Generally speaking, I'm going to start on this bottom row here. We have our low pass and our high pass here, and then we have our shelving EQ here in the middle. And that's usually where I'm going to start for this type of EQ. This sound to me is sounding a little woofy. It's got some low end stuff that I'm not digging. So I'm going to bring up this high pass. I'm going to bring that up to 80, which is right at noon there. I find that that's a good place to start. So here's what we have with that. Already, that's sounding really great to me. Definitely a lot better and a big improvement. From there, maybe I'm going to use this low shelf and just take a little bit of that back. Maybe I'm going to take this low pass down just a hair. Again, here we're making kind of more gentle type tweaks. We're just taking a little off here and there, maybe adding a little bit. Maybe we want to add a little bit of highs. That's giving us some really nice sparkle, some good definition there. Now, I will tell you here, just as a bit of a warning, you don't want to spend too much time EQing soloed out, just playing by yourself. Now, if that's how you're playing and, you know, that's the sound you're going for, then great. But typically, you want to make these kinds of EQ tweaks in a mix or in the context of other instruments, because that's really going to give you a clear picture of how your guitar needs to sound, what it needs to sound like to sit in the mix correctly. Now, another thing that we might do when doing this kind of EQing is kind of boost somewhere in the mids. This is going to help separate our guitar from other instruments, maybe push it out front a little bit. This is why people love overdrives like the Tube Screamer or the Klon, because they have this slight kind of mid push that really helps set your guitar apart. We can kind of simulate that with maybe something like this. Maybe we've got a wider Q here, and we're just going to boost just a little bit. So I'll boost a whole lot just so you can hear what frequency that's kind of landing on. That almost sounds like a cocked wah kind of thing, which is another cool effect. That's more of a creative type use of EQ, just giving that kind of wah sound there. But we might even go a little lower with that. But taking that gain back just so that it's boosting just a little bit. That's back flat. And boosting that just a little bit. That's going to be great for chords or even single note stuff, just to kind of give it a little more oomph. Now, I said with this type of EQ, we generally want to do it gently, right? We don't want to make any big moves with EQ, but definitely experiment with that, because you can find some really cool tones like we did with almost that cocked wah kind of sound. Especially in the context of a mix, making bigger EQ moves like that can really help a guitar stand out in a mix. One thing that's a little different about the Para EQ is that it has a switchable boost. A lot of times EQs have an overall volume control, and that makes EQs great for boosting your signal. You can EQ a certain sound, especially some of that mid-range stuff we talked about, and then boost it up so that you're really hitting your amp. Maybe you're causing your amp to overdrive even more. And I think the Para EQ does this really well. With it, I can do some of this general tone shaping stuff, but if I wasn't doing that, then I could really take advantage of these mids and high bands to really boost, you know, almost like a lead boost kind of thing, right? Could do something like this. Also, another great use for this, some of the different bands and shelves is, sometimes when you boost an amp, it might get woofy, it might get a little mid-heavy or low mid-heavy, get muddy. And with this, we can boost it, but we can also kind of take away some of those lower frequencies that might get a little muddy or cause our signal or cause an amp to kind of be flubby or something like that in the low end. So let's hear what that sounds like on this amp, just kind of boosting it. I really dig pushing this amp with this EQ. So without the boost, we have, and if we boost it, I might bring that high pass up a little more, back where we had it around 80. Now, obviously, I would want to spend some more time dialing that in, but you could hear as it boosted, some of that low stuff kind of stuck out a little more, or at least it did to me. And so I would maybe jump to that low band to kind of clean that up a little bit. You can spend a lot of time doing this. That's so flexible, this EQ, and so there's a lot of different ways that you can tweak your tone. We touched on this next way to use EQ earlier, but it's kind of more of a creative way, right? So say we flatten out these parametric bands up here, and then we can use these high pass and low pass filters to kind of give us more of a lo-fi sound. If we bring that high pass way up there, then we're going to get this kind of sound. That's almost that kind of, AM radio type sound, and we could tweak more there and really dial that in. But, using an EQ for those kind of more creative type sounds, getting a lo-fi sound, or again, that cocked wah sound by boosting the mids a ton, are all really cool ways to use EQ for different types of tones. Hopefully this video has been helpful for you, just learning about EQ and learning different ways to use it. Big thank you to Empress for sending me the brand new Para EQ Deluxe. This is the best EQ I've ever played. I love the feature set. I love the boost on it. It really does make getting great tones easy. So if you're in the market for an EQ, definitely check it out. Obviously, a lot of the ideas in this video don't have to be used on this EQ. You can use it on a lot of different types of EQs, but the Empress is a great one. This is the first video of the year. I know it's been a long one, so if you made it this far, thank you so much. If you haven't done so already, hit that subscribe button. All right, until next time, I'll see you out there.